very much. Sir, thanks very much for that very detailed and thoughtful exposition on India's power sector. Everything you talk about is in multiples of 2, 3 more earlier than targets. So a lot of what we hear, I mean, you've done 24, well, almost 100% connectivity, right, on power, 100%. Yes, so we hear a lot about the target of uninterrupted power supply over the next couple of years, after the elections and so on.
It's here, it's now.
Right.
Because the rules have already been promulgated. That's again something which I sort of hammered down in the meeting today with all the states. Any load shedding, you get penalized. It's there because the capacity is there, the ability to transfer electricity is there from any corner to any corner. We have strengthened the distribution systems. There is no reason why any DISCOM should do load shedding. So if they do load shedding, they have to explain why. They have to give, they have to compensate the consumers. Now, all that I'm asking is for the consumers to stand up and complain. Incidentally, we have set up computer grievance redressal mechanisms in every division and every circle. So file a complaint.
So the question I think is at the level of challenge at the consumer level. I mean, just before you came in a little earlier in the evening, we had Mr. Jayant Sinha, Chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance, and he was doing an address from Hazaribagh from his constituency. And there was an issue there a little bit. So that's just a small example, but at the ground level, how do you get over those kind of challenges coming forward?
You know, earlier, there was this feeling that you have the state governments. You know, there was this misconception. So the power is in the concurrent list. So people felt that concurrent list means that, you know, the state government has total control over distribution and the central government only looks after generation. Nonsense. The entire sector is in the concurrent list. That means the center has as much authority over distribution as you know, the state has over generation. It's across the board. So we made rules. We made rules, and those rules are made under law. They are subordinate legislation. They have been laid before the parliament. So they are subordinate legislation. Any violation of the rule is a violation of the law, and that entails penalties. And I have already told everybody that we shall prosecute you if you are in violation of the rules. And we have made rules which provide for this, that there shall be no load shedding. Now, why this load shedding happens now here and there, would be happening, and I'm getting this investigated, is that some states have may have run out, some distribution companies may have run out of money for buying power. Now, I have made a system, you know. Basically, I'm saying 2 or 3 things. I have been saying 2 or 3 things. One is that if you are a state chief minister, or if you are a state power minister, whatever, and you want to give subsidy, go right ahead. Give everybody subsidy, give you know, free electricity to everybody. I have no problems at all. But you don't want the consumer to pay, you have to pay. So that subsidy amount has to be paid up front. We have made rules. And if you don't pay the subsidy up front, it does not get passed through. Second, you buy electricity from the generator, you have to pay. If you don't pay, your connectivity to the exchange gets cut off in the first leg. You delay further by 30 days further. Number one, you delay by 30 days. The time for payment is 45 days. You don't pay in 75 days, your connectivity to the exchange gets automatically cut off. Nobody can interfere. It's built into the system now. You you delay for a further 30 days, your short-term access goes, total. And your medium-term access goes. And your further 30 days, your long-term access gets cut by 10% every month. So you can't get electricity from anywhere. Now, this has proved effective, so effective that the outstanding dues of GenCos used to be 1,35,000 crores in 2021 or so. That's been brought down to about 52,000 crores. And every month they pay installments to wipe that out. And current dues are paid every month. There is no outstanding dues payment. Now, what would be happening somewhere is that some DISCOM may still be not viable enough, not having enough money to pay for the power. Though we have reduced, as I said, I have increased the viability. The losses have come down from 27 to 15%. And I have made rules to make sure that the losses come down. Now, some DISCOM may still be lagging behind. Now, those DISCOMs, they have to be supported by the state government. Otherwise, they'll have to pay a penalty. If that happens.
Right. So, if we are getting into election season, if the government comes back to power and we have a Modi 3.0, well, in a Modi 3.0 government
will,
after
yeah.
the election, what would be, in your view, the 3 important priorities for the power ministry?
One is capacity. The second is capacity. The third is bring down the losses from 15% to about 12% or 10%. So the top right. As far as energy transition is concerned, I'm already a world leader. Now, earlier, you see all these guys from the developed countries would come, and they would start off by saying how necessary it is to carry out, energy transition to away from fossils, etc. Now they don't. Now they don't, because I'm doing better than them in energy transition. So now I talk to them; they don't talk to me. So as far as transition is concerned, I'm well off. So capacity, 1. Capacity, 2, because in spite of the fact that I have added almost, the total capacity of what used existed, I'm near doubling it. Despite that, I still have to add more capacity.
One of the things that you spearheaded yourself, and what the ministry has done very successfully, is to put in place a system for timely payments from discoms to the generation companies and so on. Now, while that is on track, there is a issue of legacy debt for the discoms. So how do you?
That's what I brought down, no? The legacy dues. The current dues are all up to date. We are the only country probably in the world where the current payments for electricity drawn from Gencos is totally up to date. Legacy dues was 1,35,000 crores. Now, what I have done is that the rule which we made, we said that is given any payment which you make will first go against the legacy dues. So now, how do you manage it? So I said, fine. Now, legacy dues I'm making into installments. So I made it into installments. So I said that every month you have to first pay that installment of legacy dues, and then you have to pay the current bill. You have to do both. You can't pay the current bill without paying the legacy dues installment. So that is being paid. The current bills are being paid, and
so if I may,
1,35,000 to 50.
If I may push you, any major announcements in your sector we can expect in the interim budget?
In the interim budget, I have a number of asks. So I have placed that before the Ministry of Finance. Let us see.
And what are your asks?
No, my asks are what? I mean, basically, I want more sort of green finance. I want incentives for, green hydrogen, etc. So these are between me and my finance. Yeah.
Fair enough. There is a projection that this year the peak demand could be hitting about 256 GW.
Yes.
Are we prepared for that?
Yes, I hope so. I hope so. I have adding capacity. You see, I have, as I said, 27,000 megawatts under construction. I'm trying to get that. That is thermal. I'm trying to get that through as fast as possible. I have 99,000 megawatts of renewable under construction. So I'm trying to get that through as fast as possible. So these are under construction. So these are in the pipeline. So I am now thinking of the next year, the year after that. So I'm starting new capacities very quickly, both renewable and thermal and hydro. So as I said, looking ahead, I see that as the major challenge before me. The fact is that if there is not enough power, our country will not grow at 7.5%. So it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we have that power. Because without electricity, no industry is going to come. That is very clear about. So we have all that capacity under construction. Adding, my installed capacity today is 426,000 megawatts. So the peak demand of 254,000 megawatts should not be an issue. But in thermal, what happens is that typically on any given day, I would have about 12 13 to 15,000 megawatts, which are out, which are not on bar because of some niggle here or there. So one has to have that much of reserve. The problem is not so much during the solar hours, because I have added that much of renewable energy capacity. I am running neck to neck insofar as the non-solar hours are concerned, where thermal is the requirement. Now, initially, there was this feeling that, let's not add too much of thermal because we have to transition anyway. But the point is that storage is expensive. I came out with bids for storage, very expensive. I can't afford to bill my people at 12 rupees 50 paise for electricity. But 10 rupees a unit for storing electricity for 1 hour, renewable energy. So I still have to rely on thermal until and unless the storage cost comes down. So I have to add thermal. So I'm adding thermal. And I don't make any apologies for it, plain and simple. Why? Because my per capita emissions are still the world's lowest. So I do not make any apology. I'm brazen about it. If needed be, instead of 87,000, I'll add 120,000 megawatts of thermal. But there's not going to be any shortage of electricity, because without that we can't grow.
Mr. Singh, you spoke very forcefully about India being on track for the renewable energy targets for 2030 and ahead of the targets. This is something the Prime Minister has personally led from the front as well, and so on. I know he's also talked in the past of 100% over by 2070 and so on. How much, while we are ahead of the targets, as you said, how much investment is needed, and where do you see that coming from in the coming period to achieve the remaining targets?
No, we are getting investment. We have, the Bloomberg rated us as the most attractive destination for investments in renewables in the world. So I'm getting investments. I have no problems on that. What I need to do is I need to get more and more storage capacity. So we had one PLI for manufacturing of battery storage. Unfortunately, that first PLI, it has focused entirely almost on mobility, for which you need a different type of storage. That type of storage is something which requires fast charging and fast discharge, etc. The storage which we need for grid scale, storing thousands of megawatts for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, is different. So we are coming out with another bid for another PLI for storage, which will be for grid scale storage. Now, once that manufacturing happens, then the price of storage will come down. So from 10 rupees, it has already come down globally, I believe, to about 7.5 rupees, 6 rupees. But we wanted to bring down to come down further. Pump storage is cheaper. Pump storage, I am adding. We've carried out a survey of all the possible sites, and we are trying to operationalize it as soon as possible. That will cost me about 3 rupees 50 paise, 4 rupees per kilowatt hour. So once this gets on track, then I may not really have to push so much for thermal. But till this gets on track, that is necessary, because you need round-the-clock electricity.
Right. So on the question of green hydrogen,
but investments I'm getting. Even for storage, PLI, I'm getting investments. For manufacturing of solar cells and modules, right from polysilicon upwards, I'm getting investments. So we are not having to put in any money. I mean, our business world is now big enough.
So you mentioned manufacturing. If I may ask you a little bit more about that. There was a push to indigenize manufacturing in this. So what's the response been on that, and the kind of where do you think we are on that? Because a lot of the equipment was Chinese manufactured earlier.
Yes. So it's like this. The capacity. First, what we did was we put customs barriers. The customs barriers were huge, hefty. So 40% on modules, they are still there, and 25% on cells. Now, then we also came out with non-tariff barriers, because what happened was that despite these customs barriers, you had manufacturing from, let's say, China being offshored to countries with which we had an FTA. Basically, you stamp it with a country where we have an FTA, so you escape the customs barrier. So we brought in something called a non-tariff barrier, approved list of models and manufacturers. So that's worked. the net result of all this has been that the capacity of module manufacturing has gone up from about 20,000 megawatts to about 50,000 megawatts now. But it's still going up further. By 2030, much of the capacity is under construction. So I'll have by 2030 about 24,000 megawatts of manufacturing capacity from polysilicon to modules, the entire value chain. And I have said that I'm not going to accept anything below 19% efficiency. So that is another thing which I'm looking at. And this 19% efficiency, this lower threshold will keep getting up. So maybe after a year or 2 years, I'll make it 21%, as a threshold, lower threshold, and so on. So I already have 50,000 megawatts manufacturing capacity of modules. Cells, polysilicon to module 24,000 megawatts by 2030 will be there. It's under construction. I'll have the entire value chain of about 50,000 polysilicon to modules and 50,000 cell module by about 2030. So about 100,000 megawatts. So we are already exporting now, United States, etc. That volume of exports is going to grow, and of course my domestic demand will grow. Right. Wind, I am already a leader. About we export wind equipment already. Some larger capacity of wind turbines have to be made here. So I have told my manufacturers that there is going to come a time when I am going to say that I will not accept any turbine less than, let's say, 5 megawatts or whatever. But about 80-90% of the manufacturing is already here. We export from here. Hydrogen, I am going to be a leader, as I said. HVDC, transmission lines. Now that is one field where I want entrepreneurs to get in. So some of the manufacturers are getting in. Because we are adding this much of thermal capacity, so in between what had happened was that the world thought that we are moving away from thermals. So the manufacturing capacity of thermal equipment, boilers, steam turbines, have come down. We only have 2 manufacturers now left. So that again has to increase.
So on the question of green hydrogen, you mentioned hydrogen a little bit. This is something the Prime Minister has talked about at the Independence Day earlier. You've announced a whole bunch of incentives, 17,000 plus crores up to 2030. What's the response been to that since the incentives were announced on the demand side?
Great. So as I said, we came out with a bid for PLI for making green hydrogen. It was oversubscribed, that bid. So that is good. We've also come out with a bid for manufacturing of electrolyzers. So because the world capacity of making electrolyzers is also limited, so that response has also been very good. So I'm getting investments. And making of green hydrogen, apart from the PLI, people are setting up capacities by themselves also. So the capacities are being set up. The total capacities which are under planning, different stages of planning, is 7.8 million tons, which is pretty good, one of the largest in the world. So barriers set up by some countries is a worry. One country, I will not name the countries. One country, as I said, $3 of subsidy per kilogram green hydrogen. Some countries, the European countries, came out with other non-tariff barriers, saying that the generation of renewable energy and the electrolyzer, the distance between that should not be more than 500 kilometers, etc. These are non-tariff barriers. So we said that you must remove these because you keep telling us, you have been lecturing us, the developing world, about the values of free trade. So now why this protection is there. Now they have also got into agreements with other countries for importing green hydrogen, like countries like South American countries, etc. So I questioned, I said, what is this? You buy green hydrogen on basis of open bid. Everybody will compete. So those barriers will break down. We shall emerge as the biggest exporter in the world. I don't have any doubt about that. Because you can talk about making green hydrogen in Peru or wherever, or Africa or Morocco. You will have the sun, no doubt, but you don't have the transmission, you don't have the ecosystem. They can't make green hydrogen cheaper than I can. So ultimately, I think the price will prevail. There's another thing. all these developed countries, apart from needing green hydrogen, also need carbon credits, because they don't want to, they don't want to sacrifice their, standards of living, which necessitates large quantum of energy spent on heating, etc. They want carbon credits. And so for green hydrogen, we will be giving carbon credits. Those who buy green hydrogen from here will get a part of the carbon credits. So we are getting into agreements like this. They want that. So ultimately, we shall be the major exporter.
Right. So my last question to you. India is in the unique position where, while we are championing clean energy in the way that you outlined, we are also one of probably the only country in the world, barring China, which is also adding coal capacity in terms of coal generation plants and so on.
No, other countries have also added.
So while, and I think the 80 gigawatt 87 is going to be added. Now there is a concern in certain quarters that globally the investment on that is coming down. So are you concerned about that in terms of the investment for the extra capacity you're adding here?
I have the money. My economy has the money. So financing is no issue at all whatsoever. The fact is that, the different manufacturers are also coming, and many of them are manufacturers from the West who are going to give us equipment. So that is no issue. You see, the thing is, and when it comes to the reality, when it comes to facts, everybody is realistic. For example, when the gas supplies from the Soviet Union got disrupted because of some bombing, Germany restarted its thermal power plants. UK restarted its thermal power plants, and suddenly all the statements emanating from the developed countries was not about transition, was about energy security. And they said that energy security is of paramount importance. So they bought gas from wherever. Now gas is fossil. Gas is fossil. You burn gas, you emit carbon dioxide. So all all this talk about how necessary it is to transition was gone. All this is reality. So let there be no mistake. Every country looks out for its interests of growth and the interests of its people. You've grown using fossil fuels. You are responsible for 85%. When I say you, I mean the developed world is responsible for 85% of the carbon dioxide load, which has caused this rise in temperature by 1.1 degree. The global rise in temperature is 1.1 degree. 85% of that emission has come from the developed countries. Our contribution is just about, I think, 3 or 4%, whereas my population is 17% of the global population. Our per capita emissions are 1/3 of the global average. The per capita emissions of Europe are 3 times the global average. So they are still spewing at the fastest rate. I am spewing at the least rate. And they are responsible, 85% of them, for 85% of the global warming already. And they are not going to reduce their per capita consumptions. Let me tell you this. That's why they are on the lookout for carbon credits, so that they can offset it. That is the main thing. So they talk and talk, but they haven't done anything. If they were actually serious about doing something, they would have worried about round-the-clock renewable energy. They would have added capacity for making storage batteries. They didn't do that. Why? Because they thought that, just speeches and talk once a year when the countries gather for COP will be sufficient. Yeah?
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh, for such a thoughtful presentation first and for taking all the questions.
Thanks.
And for being so thoughtful. Thank you.
I'd request Nalin to please give a token of our appreciation to the minister. So please stay back on this stage.